Hello, my name's Tim Millikin. Welcome to the Veloccino Cycling Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Veloccino Cycling Podcast. Today with Gemma. How did you like our last recording?
It was good. It was a good recording, and you know what? It was really good to get together with you and Mike again, sit in the same room, record, and just have great fun, really. It was brilliant.
I also had one beer.
Oh, you did? Yeah. Was it a Beck's Blue?
No. It was
A proper beer?
with alcohol. Because of this COVID thing, I felt like I have to drink a beer.
Oh, okay. Unlike tonight, I've got a Ribena and you've got a water. That's how we roll.
It's beautiful water from the Chiltern Hills. It's very rich in chalk. I don't know how you say that. Anyways, I was thinking about we are coming closer to the year's end. So here it comes to planning for next year. And I have a couple of crazy things in my head. Some of them are all around going longer distances.
That wouldn't be hard.
What do you mean, like longer distances?
Well, longer than you go already. So what would
you
that
mean down
what would
to
that be?
Wendover and back?
Yeah. So sort of double that distance.
Maybe to Tring.
Carry on.
Maybe like different countries, traveling further. Okay. And I don't know, like as much as I like to do it, I've never really thought properly through the whole process, what it does involve. Like, would I have to prepare like different visas for different countries?
I think Tring, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think so too. Anyhow, did you ever think about cycling around the world?
I actually didn't at all. As much as I love cycling and I ride my bike a lot, one of the things I've never thought about doing is riding it for a real extended period of time or out of this country. I have ridden abroad before, not on my own bike at all, and definitely not ventured there from here. It's something that hasn't crossed my mind. I am in absolute awe of anyone who does something like that, even just at the planning stage, because I just don't have a long enough attention span to even start planning it.
Shall we speak to someone?
Be a great idea, yeah.
I found one, and because there's a book, it's really, really good, and it's called Reading to Reading, and I thought, like, yeah, that's my kind of rider. Like, Not far. It's like Wendover to Wendover. But then I looked actually into it, and it's actually Reading in the UK to Reading in the US.
Oh, bit of a difference. Yeah. I think if it's something that you're thinking about, even just at this early stage, maybe just to hit you with a bit of reality, it would be good to chat to someone who's done that.
Today, welcome to the show, Tim Millikin.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you all.
No, thank you for coming onto the show and to record with us on this late hour, because what the listeners don't know, we had like a couple of technical issues, which took us like about 2 hours to fix.
Oh, not that long. We're getting quicker, actually. Much quicker.
Drunk on Ribena.
Very smooth.
Anyway, so Tim, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, as I mentioned earlier, you are an author of a book, an adventurist. Is this how you can say it?
I think, an adventurer, I like to say. It's a bit of a catch-all term these days. I think everyone is a bit of an adventurer. Yeah. But, it's a cool title.
Yeah, it's definitely. Like, I'm not an adventurer, but I'm an adventurer.
You're a dreamer.
Yeah, I'm a clown. So what about the book? Is this your most recent? Or shall we maybe explain? So I know you via a very, very good friend of mine called Douglas, and to the listeners that are with us since the very beginning, Douglas was one of our first guests in the show, crossing the African continent, cycling from Cairo to Cape Town. I'm not surprised that he has like equal crazy friends. So he introduced me to you.
Yes, he did. Yeah, I was actually working with Doug on the latest TDA tour, which was a trip from Ljubljana in Slovenia down to Gibraltar. So we had 22 clients and a staff of 4. And I met Doug there. He was a mechanic and I was the support leader for the tour. A lot of fun, as you can imagine, cycling that big distance. But it's very different than cycling with clients than it is on your own. It's much harder, I would say.
So how long did it take you?
That was 6 weeks. So probably 5 weeks riding and 6 weeks in total with the rest days.
And just like most listeners might not be exposed to that, is this like all of a sudden there's like a couple of clients and like, oh, we would like to cycle a crazy long distance, and then let's just book this tour, and then you guys will be there, and they're like, oh, we take you around, or how does that work?
Yes, the company we work for is called TDA, and they do tours all around the world, and they're famous for cross-continent tours. So like anywhere between 1 month to 4 month, 5 month trips. So it could be the whole of Africa, could be the whole of Europe, the whole of South America. Big epic journeys, and they're amazing because then you can just book on for the whole thing, or you can book on for a little bit, but there'll be a staff team there. It's not your own, you do it with a team, and they will escort the people, escort their bags. There's a chef, there's sometimes a medic, there's a mechanic, there's tour support like myself, there's a tour leader. We will assist the people to get across the continent. So they have to pedal themselves and put up their own tents and get themselves to the start line and get away from the finish line. We will help them complete the journey, and it's a lot of fun in helping them because we get to sort of be part of that journey as well, even though we're working on it and it's our job.
But that's quite different to what you've done on your own, right? Because
massively different. Yeah. Do you know what? So when you're working with clients, like when you get up in the morning, you've got to be really buzzing and go, hello, what do you need? And when you're on your own, you can just lie in bed until 9 o'clock and don't do anything.
That's absolutely crazy. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, I think I'd like to know how you started cycling.
I was born in Essex, but grew up in Reading. So I'd cycled around Reading when I was younger. And I guess I really got into cycling as a commuter. Like I used to cycle my bike to work. So when I lived in London, it was my mode of travel because obviously the tube's quite long, and a bike, you could get this from my house in Archway to Camden in the same time or less than the tube. So for me, cycling was at the beginning just about commuting. I was never what I'd call a serious cyclist. Even up until the day I started, I wasn't really a serious cyclist. Like I hadn't worn the clip-in shoes until the day I started. I hadn't worn any of the Lycra until the day I started. I realized that was a really big mistake when you've got 40 kilos of gear on your bike and trying to clip in your shoes for the first time is really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when did you do the switch? Where you were like, okay, I'm a commuter now, but now I want to cycle further.
So let me go back a few stages. So I was commuting, used to live in London, and would be commuting to my place of work, which was Camden, living in Archway. I then had an opportunity to move to Australia for a personal trip, not for work, just to go and travel on a working holiday visa. And out there, I was on a bus, and I'd be sitting on the bus and looking out the window and go, oh, I wonder what's in between these villages and these villages, because Australia is massive and it takes you 12 hours to get around anywhere on the bus. So like I'm looking out the window going like, I don't know what's happening in those little towns, and that makes me curious. And I wonder if I could cycle around Australia rather than get the bus. And I was like, that's a great idea, Tim. So I got my little journal out and I was making notes and going, cycle around Australia, scratched out. And I was like, maybe I could cycle home from Australia. So the first genius was to actually attempt to cycle home from Australia. I didn't do that.
I'm just saying. Whoa. I went to Australia. I didn't travel on a bus. So I traveled on a plane from place to place, much quicker than a bus, FYI. When I got there, I didn't think. Well, I did think actually what's in those different places, but I had a camper van and I drove. Yeah, Never once did it occur to me to cycle to the different places in Australia, and it definitely didn't occur to me to cycle home. I knew I was getting on that plane, 24 hours. That's a long time on the plane. Never once. Niels?
No, I wasn't in Australia, but I wouldn't even think of cycling to Australia.
You just rolled off. Tim just rolled that off. Like I thought I'd just do this bit of cycling, then I thought I'd cycle home. Yeah.
So did you then say like, okay, I cycle home?
So that was the plan. So what I had, my partner at the time was Finola, and she will come up later in the story. So we decided to do a trial first. So before we would cycle home, let's actually try and cycle a little bit of Australia, just to see if we actually like this thing, if we can actually make it work. So we bought some bikes. I think mine was $100, hers was $10. No, not that point. No, a bike yet. No, yeah, I had to buy the bike.
This sounds like a classic Niels story, except for he wouldn't have got this far.
We must be friends.
yeah, right, yeah. It's so funny how many of these stories do start with like, and then I just had to buy the bike.
Yeah. Amazing.
So we bought the bikes for very little money, and then we didn't have any gear, and we didn't really knew anything about cycle touring or bike packing or anything. So what we did, we got some milk crates and cable tied them to the rack, and then put our backpack in the milk crate and started cycling. And the milk crates, the backpacks would swing left and right and then fall off as we turned left or right. It was a nightmare. So we quickly decided that wouldn't work, and we got one of those trailers you get for kids, and then we put our backpacks in the trailers, and then we cycled 2,000 kilometers from Noosa to Brisbane. No, it was about 800 kilometers. So it was from Noosa to Brisbane, so 800 kilometers in about 10 days. So a very leisurely tour.
Did you not have a sore bum after that? Having never done it
Do
before.
Do you know what? I don't remember. I probably did.
Just take the saddle off.
yeah, you're a brave man.
That's the first thing I thought of.
Hilarious. This is so good. And is this where did this basically set the spike? What? No, not the spike. The spark.
The spark.
Yeah.
I thought we got saddle off spike. Anyways.
Did it set the spike or the spark?
Did it set the spark off? You know
yeah, it did, in fact. Like, it was hard. Like, it was the first time we'd ever done anything like that. And what you realize is that we were all really hungry and really tired. And so we had quite a lot of arguments. But, we met some amazing people and saw some places we'd never thought we'd see. Like, we'd camped by the Glasshouse Mountains. We stayed on a pineapple farm in the Sunshine Coast. We swam in the sea and camped in the wild. Saw koalas by the side of the road. And it's like, this is actually really amazing. But because it was also quite hard, when I then said to Finola, do you want to now cycle home? She went, no, let's get the plane.
Sensible. Sensible women.
So we flew back. Yeah, indeed. Yeah, she's like, no chance. That was fun, but let's park it there.
But that must be because of the pineapple farms. Because if you cycle home, there are no pineapple farms. Do you know that I have a pineapple tattoo?
I didn't know it was an actual tattoo. I just thought you liked pineapples.
No, I have it here. It's actually one of my... anyways. We spoke
Pineapple's amazing.
Yeah, this is why.
When you come on the podcast, Niels, you can add that to your list of things to talk about as well.
Pineapple episode.
Yeah. Anyways, so but I guess the thought was still back in your mind, and like at some point you want to go further and like this is basically where you really start to enjoy cycle touring.
Yeah, and it did. That trip was amazing, and then but it. Always something burned in the basement, so to speak. There's like there's a line in Rocky where he goes, there's something left in the basement. I think he comes back and he fights for like the last time or the time before the last. And that feeling I had the same. So it was like I still want to do that big trip, cross continent, cross country. And it actually developed from being let's cycle home from Australia to let's cycle around the world. And it's amazing when you go back to England and you have an office job, how much your brain can go, actually, we could just spend a long time on the road. That'd be a really good idea.
Wow.
How old were you, Tim, out of interest?
So when I was in Australia, I was probably 26. And when I left for the big trip, I was 29.
Yeah, so still. Wow. Yeah, I was thinking, maybe you're a teenager and you just thought, I could just do this. But no, like...
Well, I have this desire. I would rather love to cycle anywhere than sitting in front of the computer, to be honest. But
it's such a better lifestyle, eh?
But then I think there's always a difference between like really thinking about doing it and actually doing it.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. As you said, the planning stage.
My other question specifically around Australia actually was, did you ever at any point think this might be dangerous? I don't really know enough about all I'm thinking is like kangaroos.
Getting attacked by koalas. Wow. With
kangaroos,
pineapples. They run towards you and throw pineapples at you.
Actually, there is a YouTube video, I'm sure you need to look it up, where someone's cycling and a kangaroo either is alongside them or hits them or something happens with the kangaroo and a cyclist.
I'm pretty sure this is not something that Tim was really scared of.
Did you?
I think if that was me. No, it wasn't me. So I guess... Like kangaroos are dangerous. They're actually known to punch people in the face. So yeah, exactly like that. Yeah.
So we go back to the Rocky theme, like
yeah, indeed. Yeah. That's all part of the training. Kangaroo fights. But going back to the original question, like, did I feel any danger? I guess my curiosity was higher than my fear of danger, so I didn't at the time. But Finola, who I was cycling with, she would be quite apprehensive because originally I wanted to cycle from Cairns to Brisbane, and that's a long way.
Yeah, I drove it.
Yeah, and there's nothing there. Like, she was right. This is not the place to learn how to cycle to. It's like miles of outback and heat and spiders and snakes, and it's just not the nicest place to do it for the first time. So I guess I don't really have that fear gene in me when I've got a big passion or a big project on, which is quite a good thing.
How did you do it with carrying water? Because I think this was like, I mean, you need to have so much water.
Yeah, so if you look at Australia where we were, it was very well populated. So that section of coast, it's not difficult to find water. There are parts when I did the big world trip where I had to carry. Well, actually went back to Australia on the solo trip, and I cycled down the middle from Darwin to Adelaide because I hadn't been there before. And that I had to carry like 14 liters of water every day. That's a lot more. So heavy.
Wow. Adelaide's my favourite place in Australia.
Yeah, I've never
it's lovely. It's like the.
LA's
I think
cool.
It's like the Beverly Hills of Australia. I don't know why. It's just something about it. Maybe it's just the hills.
It's like the.
It's lovely.
Like
I loved it when I went. Yeah.
Yeah, they call it the city of churches, didn't they? Because they have all these churches around. It's very green, and they have lots of vineyards and things.
It was dark when I went, so I didn't notice, but I still did really like it. I was there. I was only there
dark.
one evening.
Wonderful. Thank you for that piece of information. Let's go back to Tim. So you went back to Australia. Like, there's so much. Like, how many crazy trips have you actually done? Like, let's say a crazy trip is longer than 1,000 meters.
Well, like if we say
Kilometers.
Australia was the first trip, then that would be one, and then the round the world trip would be the second ever trip that I did. So, and then, you know, after that, there was the kind of the Africa trip with TDA and sort of some personal trips. So probably 4 or 5 big cycling trips, I would say, in my life so far.
And the around the world trip.
So from Australia, so you cycled the bits and pieces in Australia. I call it bits and pieces. It was actually mega. Came back to the UK and then thought, there's this desire inside me. I still want to do more. I know I'll go all the way around the world. Still like another giant leap. You could have done many things in between that, and you thought, no, I'll just go all the way around the world.
Yeah. Do you know what? It's quite funny. It just, you know, there was never an idea to go just do a little bit. It was all or nothing. And it was just like, let's just go around the world. And I was like, well, there's not everyone, but there's there are people who's already been around the world. And I was like, I don't want to be a guy who just goes around the world. I need a cool tag for the trip. So I was like, well, I'll go from Reading, where I live, to Reading in Pennsylvania, and just call the trip Reading to Reading, just because it made me laugh. So I was like, where are you going? I'm going to Reading, USA.
That's absolutely fantastic. And I just wonder now, like, because you said earlier, what I think is fascinating, you were in the bus, like going through Australia, thinking like, oh, I could cycle then. So you did. Then you think, oh, I want to go for a longer trip. So you did. And then you said, you know what, I want to cycle around the world. So you did. Is this like your kind of personality that you say like, I either I do it like all in or nothing?
I guess at that stage, yes, in my life, yeah, I would, but because I was very driven to achieve these goals, and there's probably something burning inside me to do that. I don't know what it was that first gave me the idea, that spark, but it really resonated with me. Like, it made me feel like I'm on an authentic path right now. And so it wasn't ever a case of, I'm not going to do this. There wasn't really any doubt or fear. It was like, no, this is the right option. And yeah, I guess I had that drive that then allowed me to go for those big trips.
Just going into that a bit further, and you may not know the answer, but do you think it, in hindsight, maybe it was about the cycling, or the cycling just happened to be your mode of transport, and actually it was about taking part in this adventure, travelling this distance, and it happened that the way you did it was on the bike? Or do you think it became, or was at the beginning, about the bike and about cycling?
It was never about the bike. Whilst I enjoyed cycling and I had a level of freedom from cycling, I couldn't afford to travel around the world in any other way.
Got it.
Like, I didn't have the funds to go get flights and stay in hotels, but I had the money to sit on a bike and camp in the woods. So by having that kind of like trade-off, and I like cycling, don't get me wrong, I do enjoy cycling, and that's a big part of it. It's not like, oh, I just hate cycling, but it's the only way I can get around the world. The cycling part was really fun, but the primary objective was to see the world, first of all. And the only way I could afford to do that was on the bike.
Okay, you decided, hey, I want to cycle Reading to Reading, as you mentioned. And also you wrote a book. with the same title, which is available on Amazon actually. And before you started, did you know you were going to write a book, or did you say, was it during the trip that you decided I should write a book? Because earlier you said you had your notebook with you or your notepad with you. Is this something that you always do? Do you like write diaries and stuff? And then
No, it's really interesting. So that the book actually came a lot later in the trip. The trip was never about the book. It was a personal trip. Like whilst I would raise money for charity alongside it, I wasn't doing it for charity. I was doing it for me. And you know, the book wasn't even a germ in my brain at that point. It was all about riding and seeing the places and seeing the people and seeing the landscapes. The book in fact came later, once I'd finished the trip, and people kept going, Tim, you should write a book, you should write a book. And you go, yeah, whatever. And then you actually sit down and write it, and you're like, oh, actually this is really fun. This is quite cathartic as well, to get all those ideas and memories down on paper. But you know, I left in 2015, and like I didn't even have an Instagram account. Like it wasn't about like doing things for things. It was about doing it for me because I wanted to do it. And then the book came out of that adventure, just from, you know, A, people were asking me, and B, I just had some time off, so I thought I would start writing it.
I always think it's interesting. You're probably going to think it's a bit geeky, but the reason why people do things are either motivated just internally themselves, which sounds like Tim was, or quite a lot of us fall into this pattern now where we think we are, but actually we're motivated by external factors. So even though we're doing something, we're traveling somewhere, actually we're just posting it on Instagram the whole time, and we're being motivated by someone else seeing our journey. And okay, we're going on it, but Tim, there was nothing, you know, Instagram, it probably was around, I can't remember, but a while ago, you were just doing it purely for you. I'm just doing this for me. I'm raising some money for charity, but no one's really going to know I'm doing it all the time, and what I'm seeing is just for me. And I think there's something really cool about that.
I love it.
Yeah,
I really love it.
I agree. There's like a mindset. There's like, you know, I often do it these days as well. Like say I'm going hiking in North Wales. I'm like, oh, I'll get some cool pictures and I'll put them on Instagram later. And that's part of my brain pattern, how my brain's going, oh, let's do that. But before, on the trip, it just wasn't even a plan. It was just like, if you're taking a nice picture, it's because you actually quite enjoy the view. And nowadays, probably I'm slightly addicted to social media like everybody else.
Yeah, I think it's part and parcel of the world and the times we live in, and it's really difficult to get away from that, actually, to go and do something, whatever it may be, cycling, having an adventure, and just keeping it for yourself or that person or people or family that you're with at the time. That's really, really hard. So I think you had something special there, however many years ago, where it was just all about you.
And question there is actually, yes, you did it for you, but did you tell, when you decided to do it, did you tell many people, or did you just tell like a few people? Because it's always like, this is quite a massive thing, right? To tell someone like I'm going cycling around the world, because you will inevitably meet people that will tell you don't do it, and so the more people you tell about it, the higher the risk that they want to try maybe to stop you from what you actually want to do. So did you tell it to like many people before, or did you keep it very close to yourself?
That's true what you say. The more people you tell, there is a percentage you might try and put you off. Yeah. But there's the other fact that the more people you tell, the more accountability you have. Yeah. So if you have this idea in your brain to do it, but you don't tell anyone about it, you're probably never really going to go. But if you tell all your friends and family you're going to cycle around the world, you've got to at least start, right? Because you totally quit your job.
Niels, how many people have you told that you're going to do something? Maybe tell more people.
Well, to be honest, I had a very similar situation when I told people back then I would emigrate to South Africa.
Yes, yeah.
Everybody was like, "Don't be stupid. Don't do that. Like, grow up." You know, most people like, "Grow up. You have to make a plan for your life." And you're like, "But this is my plan."
My plan is South Africa has amazing wine.
Yeah, exactly, and like fantastic beaches and stuff. And for me personally, and I'm sure like Tim might be able to relate to that, every decision, or most of the decisions where other people told me don't do it, have led me to much cooler things. as an example, if I would have never moved to South Africa, I would have never met my now wife.
Mm-hmm.
I would have never moved to England. Okay, that's not super cool. However,
It's cool.
you know, I would have never started the family, and I would have never met so many really fantastic people. And I'm pretty sure, like Tim has experienced very similar things. The stuff that people said don't do it have encouraged so many more cool things.
Definitely, yeah. I've just thought of this phrase now, and I don't know if it exists or not, but it might do. It's like a safety paradox, right? So if you live by everyone tells you don't do it, and you don't do anything, you live very much within your means in this little box. But the minute you start to break out, I think cool things can happen. Be it moving to Africa, cycling around the world, getting the rainbow jersey, all those kind of things are quite amazing.
You know what I want to know as well? You were starting to kind of get into cycling as your mode of transport. You thought this is the way it's going to be and the way I'm going to get around the world. How did you pick your bike? And was it a big decision, or was it just something, I need something to get around, I will go for X bike on Facebook Marketplace? Didn't exist.
So it didn't exist, but you know what did exist? Like bike forums, right? So I'd scour the internet looking at like best bike for bike touring. And then, you know, everybody recommends 26-inch wheels, steel frames, cable rim brakes, fix it anywhere in the world. And I was like, okay, I'll get one of them. Looked it up, the price, £2,000. No, thank you. Right. What I do is I buy it off eBay, or I think I actually got mine off a cycling forum, CTC, buy a bike forum. And I bought a Dawes Sada for £90.
Brilliant.
That is the bike I want.
It's good though that it sort of started to spark your interest a bit, and you thought, I do need to know a little bit about bikes now, and you obviously know what you're talking about there. Okay, you didn't go for it, but you knew what you were talking about. You knew what you potentially did need, and you had to get the knowledge because actually you were going to need something to get you that was going to get you around the world.
I needed something reliable, so that's what and cheap, because I was like, you know, the idea was to see the world. So I had a small pot of money, and I could spend a lot of that on the bicycle, or I could spend a lot of that on the trip. So I was like, well, I'll spend a little bit on the bicycle and spend the rest of it on the trip. Yeah. And the other cool thing I did, actually, I became a volunteer at a place called the Reading Bike Kitchen. So it's like it's a bike kitchen. So they help people come in, they do their bikes up with supervision and with guidance. And I managed to there learn a lot of mechanical skills. So even though I had quite a cheap bike, I knew how to fix it. And that proved invaluable. Again, more of a cost saving matter, but just, you know, helps, you know, build that basis, and you know what you're doing and know what you're riding.
Do you still have that bike?
No, I don't. No. Unfortunately, I was hit by a car in El Salvador. This is a good story. So I was cycling around that midday in El Salvador. I just crossed the border the night before, and it was a beautiful sunshine, and I was going along. It was like 30 degrees, and I heard brakes from behind me. I turned around. The last thing I remember is a blue pickup truck inches from my back wheel. And then I woke up on the side of the road looking up, and there was a policeman, and I just said, hospital. And he drove me straight to the hospital, where I was in hospital for 10 days. You could see my skull through the outside of my head. Like, it was real bad. I was bleeding everywhere. But the bike, unfortunately, took all the damage. Well, fortunately, I should say, took all of the damage. So like the frame was snapped in two places and was then irreparable. So the bike died in El Salvador, unfortunately.
Well, lucky that you came away.
Yeah, it was very lucky. I mean, I didn't break any bones, or I had superficial injuries. The doctors were more worried about any brain swelling or anything like that, but I've either got a thick skull or a small brain, so it was all right.
Well, was this your only accident that you had during the time, or
there was a major accident. I damaged my ankle in China. I was in hospital in China for 3 days. That was a beautiful experience because we were heading towards Vietnam for New Year's, and I was really excited to leave China. I've been in China for 2 months, and I was like, I'm bored of China. I want to go to New Year's in Vietnam. That's going to be loads of fun. So we were cycling. We'd camped by the side of the road. In the morning, I got up the tent, was lifting the bike off the ridge back onto the road over a small barrier. And as I stepped over, I fell and twisted my ankle and sprained it. We were 5 kilometers away from a town, and I couldn't walk. So me and my partner flagged down a car, like hitchhiked. And the first car that pulled in was run by a lovely Chinese couple called Rennie and Rico, and they could speak English. So I jumped in the car while Rico jumped on my bike and cycled my bike to the hospital. And then
That's really good.
Oh, amazing. Let me do this.
It was amazing. Yeah. I mean, it was so cute. It was like they drove me and then my bike arrived, an hour later. I don't think he'd ever ridden a bike that heavy before in his life. And they were really, really cute. So in the hospital for 3 days, and we actually had our New Year's in the hospital. And they brought us presents. We had a little party in the hospital. It was a really, really cute experience. Everyone was taking photos of me. I had like a cast on my leg with like Chinese medicine involved. It was really, really a beautiful experience. It was much better New Year's than if I'd actually gone to Vietnam and just had a party. So
what do we learn from that? If you ever want a really good New Year's, go to China, sprain your ankle, and go to hospital.
Yeah, it was mad. So like the owner of the hospital was the lady, and she ran it with her husband, who was the chief surgeon. It was like a small private hospital, and I don't think it ever really had a tourist in there before, because it's in this tiny little town called Zhangxi. So they would take us out for breakfast every morning, and then for dinner each evening with their friends, and we'd just sit in these little Chinese restaurants eating hot pot and just talking. It's really fun.
That's amazing. And you said your partner. So did you cycle together with someone else
Yes.
at the time?
So going back to Australia, the girl I was with, Finola, we then came back to England, and as the idea germinated in me, I think it also germinated in her a little bit as well. So we left to cycle around the world together, but we didn't make it all the way around together. We actually broke up in Malaysia, and then she flew home from there, and I carried on for 2 years on my own after that.
Sorry for that.
That's okay. That's what happens.
Do you think it happened because of the trip, or is it because you realized during the trip it was not meant to be?
No, that's a good question. So I think honestly the relationship wasn't perfect when we left, but we had the drive together to go. So we were almost pushing each other to go a little bit.
Yeah, like a common purpose. Yeah.
Exactly. And when you're out on the road, camping, living off the land, hungry, budgeting, those cracks that you may have that are covered up in everyday life actually become chasms. And we were arguing a lot, and it just became no fun. So we made the decision that she didn't want to continue anymore. So she flew home in Malaysia, and I didn't want to go back to England. So I wanted to carry on. So it was definitely it wasn't like a sudden breakup. It'd been coming for a long time, but also both parties were very happy with that decision. I think she wanted to go home with her family and friends. I wanted to carry on, and I've actually written quite a lot about that in the book, and I sent her a copy, and she was like, it's good, so she's right.
I think doing anything that ambitious and for that amount of time with anybody, whether it just be your friend, your partner, your family, it's just a huge endeavour, and it's in some ways to do it by yourself seems a little bit easier. I know you don't have the support, but you just everything is done by yourself. You're not bouncing off other people. So yeah, it's tricky. I think whoever you're with.
Yeah. Even if you're going with friends, I find that just because you're in that close proximity, like in any walk of life, you're never in that proximity with anyone. So be it your life partner or your best friend, you're still going to have these days where you're just rubbing up against each other just because there's no get out. You spend your whole day with that person or people, and but that's not a bad thing either, because sometimes you can then blow off some steam and get back together. And also if you do go with other people, I remember when I'm on my own, sometimes I was a bit lonely, and you're like, oh, this if I could really enjoy this view with someone else, or this nice meal or glass of beer looking over the sunset. But it's swings and roundabouts. Each method has their own beauty and positives and weaknesses, I guess.
So good to hear. It's so super interesting, because I could also imagine, especially as a partner, when you go somewhere in these times, but it's getting tough, you will also maybe subconsciously think, I'm just doing this for you here, right? I could imagine that this might be also something then that drives you further apart. And
and what was quite interesting actually is because we argued a lot going into sort of through Turkey and through Georgia, and then we had to cross the Himalayas, so from sort of Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan into China, and it was like -15 at night, -7 in the day. It was proper winter, not winter for there, but winter for me. I mean, it gets much colder there in their winter. we actually became a really good team because we had to work together to get through this situation. And we were both quite driven at that point. But then when it got easier, so when it got into Southeast Asia,
easier Southeast Asia.
yeah. When it got easier in terms of weather, in terms of pricing, in terms of like ability to speak English, you quickly realize that you're strong when you need to be, but then it was very easy at that point to drift apart, and that's what we did.
I have this one question there. So we heard now you have been to Malaysia, to China, Himalayas, Reading. For people that cycle around the world, is there okay? I know you're from Reading to Reading, but is there like a route that everybody takes?
Did you just Google it?
Yeah, I don't know. This is
Google. Oh, it always tells you you're going to take you a lot longer than you actually are, doesn't it? Even if you're cycling or walking,
5
you take
years.
I don't know. It never seems to work out your actual speed. Sorry.
No. I guess you know what? It's quite funny because there's not a route. Like, everyone takes their own route, but there is very small cycling bottlenecks around the world where you actually meet a load of other cyclists. Central Asia is one, I think, because it's beautiful, like stunningly beautiful, 7,000 meter mountains, cheap food, valleys, amazing vistas, good people. Everybody goes there. So then there's only certain towns where everybody stays. So that's kind of like a cycling bottleneck. It's like the Carretera Austral in Chile. I was going past 10 touring cyclists a day. In Bolivia and La Paz and that section, you just meet so many cyclists. It's unreal, and you become really close, and you get really these little networks and cycle together, and it's quite fun. But I guess everyone does take their own route, but you do meet in these little intersections.
Because there's got to be some, a reasonably sensible way to go, I suppose, and things that you want to see. Did you have an idea of, obviously, the route, but things that you definitely wanted to see, or was it kind of planning as you go along, like actually when I get into this country, these are the things that I can do, rather than this just big overall plan of everything that you want to see in the world?
You can't do everything. Like you have a budget to stick to, and a rough timeline. I mean, it took me 3 years, so got quite a bit of time, but you have to choose what's right for you. So like I'm really into mountains and nature and hiking, and seeing things that I won't generally see in Reading. So like, when I was in Patagonia, I wanted to see the glaciers and the mountains, but I'm not really into history. So when I was in Cusco, I didn't go to Machu Picchu just because it was quite expensive. And I'm not that into walls, so to speak. I mean, sure, it's really lovely, but like, it's not my first thing to see. So I didn't go. And you have to kind of make those decisions as you go around. So you might look at a place or look at a route, say if you're coming into, say, I don't know, Kyrgyzstan, say, and you just pick the route that you want to do, and you can pick some of those tourist things that you want to see along the way.
2 questions. How long was the longest time you spent on the bike, even if you had a small rest, and the longest time actually spent off the bike, if there was any time that you just took out and went to see places or to stop over at an area?
So the longest time off the bike is easier, because I kind of remember that easier. So the longest time was in El Salvador after being hit by the car. That was 3 weeks off the bike. But okay, like generally, planned. That was not planned. I guess if maybe like 4 or 5 days maximum. So to rest, because you realize that once you've been cycling for a long time, what you want to do for the first couple of days is eat and just relax and rest the legs and things like that. So 4 or 5 days probably would be the longest got a planned rest, so to speak. In terms of longest time on the bike, in terms of one day, it's probably cycling for about 8 hours every day. So maybe 10 hours, I guess, might be the longest, because you're not rushing. The cycling side of it is very, it's a bit easy to realize, because you haven't got, it's not like cycling my road bike or cycling, even I'm a cycle courier now, interestingly enough. So, I cycle that more hours per day than I probably would my touring bike, because I'm getting off or reading my book or sitting in the shade or having a coffee. It's a completely different kind of mentality.
I don't know what I hit in my head, but when I heard you were like going for 3 years, I thought
it was constant.
No, I don't know.
It only just occurred to me that you might take more than, an extended period of time off the bike. And it's just a nice thought to think, actually, I'm going to spend 3 or 4 days here relaxing. It's not about the bike. It's that I want to spend the time here. I need the time to rest as well. And then I may get back on the bike to continue the next part of my journey.
Yeah, I always thought there was maybe, you come to a place and you're like, oh, that's nice here. I stay for like a month. I really don't know, because the 3 years sounds so long.
No months, according to Tim.
Yeah, it's so when you did your route planning and so on, did you basically say, like, did you do it so accurately that you knew, okay, I have 3 years, I need to go from here to here. That means every day I have to cycle X, or I have to cover X kilometers. And then when you got hit by the car, you knew, oh my goodness, I lost this amount of time. I have to catch up on this.
I think you'll like this answer, Niels. So I had no real plan. In fact, okay. I thought it would take me 2 years. It ended up taking me 3. So there was no kind of like, I've got to do the maths, because I didn't really know the route when I left, because you can't really think that far ahead. Like, I had a big world map on the wall, and I just kind of drew a line across all the countries that I thought I might want to visit. I was going to go into, the original plan was to go into Austria and down into Slovenia and down Croatia, Montenegro, and that way. But what we found is that we were spending a lot of money in Western Europe. So we thought we'd try and get into Eastern Europe as quickly as possible, just to drop the budget. So we went through Germany and then into Czech Republic and then into Slovakia. So we kind of changed that part. So we didn't really have a plan. But one of the best things about not having a plan is then you can kind of change it. The only construct we have was money, because obviously once you've got a budget, we had no income coming in on the roads. So we have to kind of manage that budget to last the time. So if I couldn't have gone any longer if I wanted to, because I ran out of cash.
Were there situations where you were like, oh shit? Like, I guess, imagine, I don't know, like, are there any situations where your bike broke, something you couldn't fix, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is bringing me like completely like towards the edge of my budget? Or is any situations where you were like, okay, shit, I really struggle with here, I might have to work? Or is it?
I did pick up a bit so I did work in New Zealand for a little bit. I also got some odd jobs in the USA, kind of like cash in hand stuff. I did some bike couriering in the US, and I worked as a travel agent in New Zealand. Actually, I thought I'd be able to sell packages to Kyrgyzstan and Georgia, but everybody wanted to go to Australia. So, okay. But yeah, like, in terms of the budget, I did manage it really well. It was because I knew that I had to have a contingency. The whole trip cost £8,500 for 3 years, so I spent about £7.
But I did really want to know.
Yeah,
that's not much. It's like,
no, it's nothing.
It's about £7 a day. So
wow.
That includes all the visas, all the flights that were required. So the actual on per day cost was probably a little bit less than that. So yeah, it's not a lot of money really, but you just manage it. You eat banana sandwiches and you camp a lot, and you make the decisions that, if you're in Australia, say, a hostel costs $35, and you're like, oh, that's quite pricey. If you're in Southeast Asia, it costs $5. So maybe you have more hostels in Southeast Asia than in Australia. And vice, you just make those decisions as you go around. And then you kind of manage the budget. But in terms of like, was there anything that, bad things that made me think, oh, this is going to cost a lot of money? Not really, no. Other than when I actually got hit by the car in El Salvador, then after 10 days, I had to go into a hotel for 10 days. And I was like, oh, this could be quite pricey. So the nurse actually drove me back into town, a town called San Miguel. I thought I'd have a nice beer there. Didn't get here. And so the nurse drove me in, and she took me to the nicest hotel in the town. It was like $40 a night. And I said to her, have you got anything cheaper? And she goes, I don't think you want anything cheaper. I was like, I'll just drop me here, I'll find somewhere. And I walked around a corner and I found a hotel that was also a brothel for $7 a night. So I stayed there for 10 days. I don't know what they thought when this guy hobbled in with crutches.
You didn't try to make money there, right?
No. I didn't have money there.
Anyways, I lost the plot.
Yeah, you definitely lost the plot.
All right.
Oh, well, and this is actually exactly to the next question, because we asked some of our friends in our Team Veloccino Facebook page if they have any questions for someone who cycles around the world. And one of the questions was actually, did you ever get lost?
All the time. So interesting. So at the very beginning of the trip, I was a novice in terms of all things navigation. What we'd actually done, we'd printed out Google Maps off the computer onto pieces of paper,
Yeah,
and we took
when
them
you
with
used to
us.
print out the AA instructions?
Yeah, exactly that. Can you remember?
Turn by turn.
Hilarious.
So,
Sorry,
you know, and no, it's grand. It was exactly that. It was almost like the AA route mapping. But what I'd done, I'd printed off the wrong port. So I'd printed off Calais and we'd actually turned up in Dunkirk. So none of the maps lined up. So we were trying to find our first night's accommodation and couldn't find it anywhere.
So you got already lost in England?
This is the first day one in France. France, coming off the boat. Absolutely crazy lost. It was like midnight when we arrived. It was dark. We're trying to find a Formula One hotel that we'd booked. We couldn't find it. Obviously, we had the wrong maps, and ended up camping in a park. Hadn't put the tent up ever before, so we couldn't work out how to put the fly over the top. So we just slept in the mesh. Then it started raining. It's a comedy of errors.
Well, I mean, was it good that it happened so early on that you got lost, or was it bad that it happened so early on?
I mean, it was a good thing. It was like, get it over and done with. Yeah. And in fact, so my next plan was actually, so because we can only print out so many maps, I thought I could cycle to Turkey on a compass bearing. So I had a little compass, and I thought if I just go southeast, I'll get to Istanbul. It really doesn't work like that. Like Belgium is really hilly. It's really so we got stuck in the hills of Belgium, and then we went to this lady in a tourist information center, and she showed us how to navigate the Belgian cycle lanes. That all, you go down this one, you follow number 6, you get to a T junction, then you follow number 56. You just write down all the numbers that you need. And we scooted across Belgium, and then we got into Germany, where we stayed with a friend, and that friend was like, you can just download maps on your phone, right? And we're like, yeah, but that won't work offline. And he goes, yes, it does. All right, grand. No. So after that point, we managed to download loads of maps and got a lot less lost.
Okay, so in 3 years, you learned a lot, I guess. How do you avoid getting lost?
These days I've used my phone everywhere. It's such an amazing tool. Even, if you're in the middle of nowhere, like when I was working for the TDA tour and we were going through Sudan or Nairobi, a big capital city, your phone's got the maps on and you can navigate anywhere. So it's much easier these days with the technology.
You know what? You can still make a mistake though, because I went to meet my friend last week. We're going mountain biking. This is up north.
In Nairobi?
No, up north, Yorkshire. And I was travelling, and I looked on he sent me the link on Google, so I was like, right, I've got it. I know where I'm going. Plugged it into the sat nav. 2 hours. Yeah, that sounds about right. It's fine. Anyway, I was near to the place. I was like, oh, it says 10 minutes now. I had a look, and it said, welcome to Sheffield. I was like, Sheffield? I'm sure we weren't going to Sheffield. I thought it was in Cheshire. Met, and I was like, this isn't near your house, is it? And he said, no, it's an hour away. And I was like, I didn't even know where I was going. I didn't even look. Just clicked on the Google map. It said 2 hours, and I thought that's about right to Cheshire. I'm sure it'll be fine. Turned up in Sheffield.
Luckily you didn't sleep in a tent.
In Sheffield. No. We then went back to Cheshire.
You might have forgot to put the top of the tent as well, and then it might have started raining.
It was freezing. We only went round the mountain bike trails for an hour. It was so cold. 1 hour, 2 hour trip.
Turn around, come back.
So now you know how to avoid getting lost. Call Tim.
Yeah. You know where you're going.
Yeah, so good. And there's so many questions. I don't like. Again, like I would like to say, I don't even know how to start with all my questions. There's so many. Like another question was that we received from friends was actually it's 2 questions, and they might be linked to each other, but I don't know. Like, which was the country that was the nicest or the most beautiful country where you were like, wow, that's amazing, or that has blown my mind. And then the second question would be which country had the nicest people, and then maybe also which country had the most unfriendly people.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. The nicest country in terms of scenery that made me go wow is Kyrgyzstan.
Oh, really?
nestled. Yeah, it's beautiful. Absolutely. It's where they do the Silk Road Mountain Race. It is on the edge of China, nestled in the Himalayas, underneath the Peak Lenin is a 7,000-meter mountain in Kazakhstan. Those mountain ranges are gorgeous. Some of the roads there are mind-blowingly beautiful. Like a
Shall we
road
go,
downhill for
Niels?
2 days. Oh, you so should. It's amazing. Go in summer. It's lovely and warm.
Okay,
He's just told you it's the best place, and
yeah,
you
but
said
it's
no.
cold.
No, I said it's warm in the summer.
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
go in the
so-
summer,
Okay.
but at the minute I thought it was cold.
It's cold right now. If you go now, you'll hate it. But if you go in the summer, it's really warm. The passes are 4,500 meters, so it's proper climbing, and you've got these
No,
little
so
villages
we're
up
not
there.
going.
Yeah, but think of the downhills now. Think of the 2-day downhill.
Yeah, he's quick on a downhill.
Of a fast bike.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim. Carry on.
Sorry.
I'd recommend anyone go there. It's awesome, and the food is different. It's interesting. It's not great, but it's lots of pasta and soups with bits of meat in. But the people are really friendly, and the scenery is epic. So
Imagine. Sorry.
I thought you were thinking about it.
I was just going to say, like, that is somewhere I reckon everyone should go at least once in their lives, including you two. I think you should definitely.
We will think about it. We will definitely take it into consideration potentially.
We can put it forward to Mike, can we?
Yeah,
A veloccino Kyrgyzstan trip.
yeah, and then we open a chapter there of like a veloccino crew of cyclists.
Anyway.
I watched a couple of years back. I don't know if you watched it. Was it a Long Way Around? The trip from Ewan McGregor and Charlie Bowman on motorbikes, and I think they also went through Kyrgyzstan, and then they, I think they made friends with like local shepherds, and they had a soup that was actually made out of goat testicles.
Oh, really?
Did you have? Did you eat anything? Any really funny along your trip as well, or?
So I don't think I ate any goat's testicles. You can never be sure. I mean, there's lots of bits of meat floating in soup, and it could well have been testicles. Who knows? Taste is fine. They also have over there a thing called fermented yak's milk, which is like yak milk, which they then ferment. So it's like slightly alcoholic, and they serve it out of the backs of car boots. So you often see like a red larder parked by the side of the road with a boot up, and it'll just have plastic buckets of fermented yak's milk. I don't recommend that. It's disgusting.
My milkshake brings, oh my god.
My milkshake brings all the boys to the yard.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody singing that song in front of the ladder.
Yeah, right.
Hilarious. And when it comes to like the like friendly people, was this also Kyrgyzstan, or was this like another country where you met super friendly people?
You know what? So I wouldn't say one particular country has the friendliest people. What I will say is that, like, once you go to anywhere else in the world, you realize that the world is actually full of friendly people. And
That's nice.
Whilst there are pockets of the world that you might seem dangerous, so let's say Honduras, for example, you might think, oh, Honduras, that sounds dangerous, potential gang crime.
Yeah, I've seen
Central
it on
America.
Ross Kemp.
Ross Kemp on gang, exactly. That's your perspective on Honduras.
Yeah.
So when I went to Honduras, I was actually really scared because I'd probably seen the same episode, like
Same
MS-13. I was like, no. So I was like, I'm going to take the shortest crossing of Honduras to sort of spend my least time there. And what I did, I crossed over the border, and I was going to get a hotel to be safe, but I crossed over the border and had a watermelon with his family. And I was like, actually, Honduras is all right. So I found a little quarry and camped in the quarry. And the next morning, woke up from the quarry and went back on my way. And there was this local Honduras man. He goes, "Did you just camp in the quarry?" And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And he goes, "Oh, nice one. Welcome to Honduras." And I was like, you know what? It's not a bad place. Like, it's just, if you take that like mindset, Ross Kemp on gang's mindset, you might be scared. But if you go there, actually realize it's a beautiful place in the end.
Lovely, yeah.
Oh, crazy. So nice. And was there a place, you said now the whole world is full of friendly people. And I think, to be honest, I think this is also my default position. I just, whenever I meet new people, I always think like, oh, friend. However, was there any place where you were like, oh, I'm a little bit disappointed. Nobody is trying to help me here. People are trying to run me over. people are trying to scam me. Was there any place like
Yeah,
this?
it was Reading, UK.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Reading,
have you
probably, like-
ever been to
So
Reading?
once you left England, it was okay.
I get more close passes here in Oxford than I ever did anywhere else in the world. Like, it's
Yeah, I can
absolutely
imagine.
mad.
Yeah, that's
Um,
true.
Sorry, actually, carry on.
No, I was only going to say, like, I can't really think of anywhere where I do remember a bad example of like continued unfriendliness.
Yeah.
Maybe France, because that guy told us off and then we quickly got out of France. That's like one example. But no,
But
I mean, if
Did you
there
get
is
told
like,
off to be in France? Like leave
so
France
when-
now.
sorry, I didn't say that earlier. I apologize. So once we'd camped on that land and the rain came in the morning, we packing up our tent and this French farmer came along and was like, "Get out!" And just of his field, not out of France. He was like, "Get out of my country!
Get out of my country."
No. You know what? I don't think there was anywhere that I can remember that would be particularly hostile towards me. In fact, most places you turn up on a bicycle, it is a great leveler and people are curious and they're like, "What are you doing? Come into my house for a cup of tea."
That's
yes.
lovely. How many countries did you
yeah.
visit in total?
On that trip was 39 countries.
On this one trip.
On that one
I was
trip,
there
yeah.
for 3 years.
Yeah, but he also did like Tour Afrique and stuff. Like. So
okay.
in total, do you know in total like Tour d'Afrique?
Oh, no, I don't know. No, it's a lot. I'd imagine. Because working with cycle tourism, you just go to lots of different places, and I guess
But
I don't know.
Reading 38. So it's relatively easy if you tell it to people. Hey, I just go from Reading to Reading in 38 countries.
39.
39.
No,
Sounds
she's
easy.
39. Yeah, 39.
So I'm not even listening
Sound
anymore.
easy.
Bloody water that I'm drinking. It makes me completely. And yeah, it's fascinating.
I mean, generally, it is actually quite easy. I mean, I don't want to, all you're really doing is cycling a little bit, having some food, and going to bed. And when you struck it down to that construct, it is quite easy. The hardest thing is to get the time off work or to have the finances or the ability to do so in the first place. That's the
But
hard
also
thing.
the bravery, to be honest. Like, come on. Even when you say like, oh, it costs like 8.5 grand, it is not that, or it doesn't sound that much. If like you have to be like of a certain caliber, or you have to have a certain bravery to say like, I have 8.5 grand, and this will get me around the world. This is really like.
Yeah, I was probably inspired. There's a chap called Alistair Humphreys. I'm sure you will know.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think he did a 4-year trip on £7,000. I thought that was that was a target. I just thought I should have a little bit more comfort than him.
Oh, so you're more like a luxury traveler then.
Yeah, luxury traveler. Yeah, 2 bananas in my sandwich rather than one.
And this was a question that I had in the back of my mind the whole time we were speaking now. But once you passed Reading in the US, what went through your head? Was this like, yeah, I did it? Or was it like, oh shit, the trip is over?
You know what? Like, it's a good question. So when I was approaching the end of it, I was kind of thinking like I'm ready to be done, And after spending 3 years on the roads, I think there are people who go around the world for 6 years, 7 years. There's a guy, Heinz Stücker, who went for 50 years. I think that becomes his life. And whereas my life, I know, go on.
No, I was going to say, you must change as a person as well, even in 3 years. So you're not the same person you started out as. So yeah, just things change.
Yeah, they do. And I think if you spend too long on the road, you become the road. I mean, that sounds a bit wanky, but like,
you
become the trip.
No, that's
yeah.
You're a philosopher, actually.
Yeah, I mean, like, you just become a bit of a hermit, and you just living. Eventually, you need to go back into society and edge back into, family, friends, employment. You've run out of money at that point, personally. But I was ready to go home. But when I was approaching Reading, I was very, very excited because this has been my goal for years. I'd probably put this Reading, USA up on a massive pedestal, thinking it's like some golden gate. It's not. It's a really rubbish little town outside of New York.
I don't even know what state it's in.
Pennsylvania. He said it earlier.
Pennsylvania.
Sorry.
I just want to pay. No, I just want to pay back for when I said 38. Can you were like,
yeah, the little war continues.
No, that's fantastic. So, but there's again so many information that you just gave in this very brief answer. When you say like after 3 years, like So basically, you arrive in Reading, in Pennsylvania, and you're like, okay, ooh, a bit of anticlimax. I thought it is supposed to be like the golden city where honey and milk flows down the road, and then it was just like Reading. And you were like, cool, this is over. And I assume you just went back to the UK then?
So this is quite a nice little story. So when I got to the end, I was imagining just sitting in a bar with a pint and just having a drink and some lunch, and then probably cycling to New York and then flying home. But the night before, I got a text from my dad, and he said, "What time are you getting to Reading, Pennsylvania?" I was like, "Lunchtime." And my dad replies, "No, what time exactly are you getting to Reading, Pennsylvania?" I'm like, "Ooh, interesting. Why do you want to know?" And he goes, "Where are you going to end your trip in Reading, Pennsylvania?" It's just a town, but it's a large town. And I was like, "I don't know, just in a bar somewhere." He goes, No, tell me exactly. So I'm thinking, interesting. So either he's going to be there, and that's really exciting, or I'm going to get to the end of the trip and realize my parents aren't there, and that's quite sad. So that gave me two sort of thoughts of feelings. And they're like, so I told my parents that I was going to end it at midday at Reading Pagoda. So Reading, Pennsylvania has a Japanese pagoda on a hill that says "Welcome to Reading." Why they have a Japanese pagoda, nobody knows, but they do.
It fits quite well.
Yeah, it fits quite well. Yeah, it was weird. So I come along, approaching the pagoda. I come into the town. I was really high spirits. I was probably singing away, going up the hill. And as I crested the hill and saw the pagoda in the background, I saw my mum and dad sitting underneath it with like a British flag and American flag going, "You did it, you did it." All the press and media that had arranged came out and took pictures and videos. It was really, a really great ending, and it was very special. So I was very thankful that they arranged that.
I honestly didn't know what way that was going to go.
Well, you never know. If his dad is like a joker, it's like, oh, what time will you be there?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
End of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers.
Well, that's
own.
Oh, it's lovely. It's really nice. Yeah.
It was really nice. Yeah.
I think, you know, that for most families, there's always like a strong bond, obviously, because parents and children, in most families, let's say it. But I think at this split second, when you realized your parents were there, I think that at that time you must have realized like how much you actually mean to your parents. And this is it's amazing. I absolutely love.
It was really nice to see them, and like they're not travelers. They've never been to America before. You know, they like going
to. Deal for them, yeah.
Massive deal for them, and it was like almost like I was a little bit of inspiration for them. And you know, we finished the trip. I'd done the interviews with the press and things, and we're just sitting around in this little tavern in Reading, and they're like, "So what do you want to do? Do you want to cycle to New York?" I was like, "No, it's done. Let's go be tourists for a few days and enjoy the end of the trip with, like, as a family together." And then that was a really nice way to finish the trip. Really special.
So nice.
Lovely. Really, brilliant ending. Really good.
With the press being there, I guess they asked you a lot of questions. Was there one really, really cool question where you were like, "Oh, that's a good question"?
Oh, I don't remember. I did a little video. It was on the news page, but I don't remember. I haven't seen it for so long. I think it was quite. I did some press as we were going around, but I think it was quite like a normal kind of quick video interview kind of thing.
We're in like the Sunday edition of the Reading Times.
I made the front page of the Reading Times. Brilliant.
That's amazing.
There wasn't much going on other than me in Reading, Pennsylvania.
Full page. You didn't get resigned to like the sports section.
That's hilarious.
Exactly.
That's so good.
With your bike in the classifieds.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And when you came back to the UK, was it difficult to settle back in?
So it could have been, but I decided like before I went on this trip, I used to work as a travel agent in an office in Reading. And when I returned from the trip, I realized I didn't want to do that job anymore. I mean, like, that job was great and I loved it. And it was like, you know, there's nothing better than planning a round the world bike trip when you're booking holidays for people all day and looking at maps. It's a really good inspiration. But I wanted to do something with the outdoors. So I changed my career for the third time in my life to be an outdoor guide and cycle tour guide. So I got a job teaching bushcraft to kids. So I was teaching camping and firelighting to 100 kids from central London in a woodland in Oxfordshire. And then I managed to get a job guiding fat bike trips in the desert of Qatar. And and then I got a job with TDA guiding trips around the world. So it's been a really good progression change, and it's kind of like then drove my hobby, then became my career, which was fantastic and meant I didn't get any of that kind of post-trip blues. I kind of found a way to monetize that interest at the beginning into my career.
I thought so, because this is really good, because when I moved, when I was in South Africa for 2.5 years, before I came to England, I moved to Germany for a bit, and I really felt a bit lost, if I'm honest. Like, it was like this adventure, how it was for me, although it was just, it was not adventuring, it was the adventure.
Change, yeah, massive life change.
And all of a sudden you're back in the, in the daily normal thing. And I thought, like, this might be really difficult, but luckily that you changed your career into something that you really enjoy. And if anyone doubted at the beginning when I said, "Oh, you're an adventurer," now they know why I called you an adventurer, because this is what you are.
Yeah, really, I feel very comfortable in this career change. It's a lot of fun, even though it may not pay as much as previously, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's always a trade of money versus time, right? And that's stuff what you enjoy doing.
So I'm interested now, Tim, to know what you do, I guess as a day job as well, but what you do with your cycling now, really.
So I still love cycling. My current partner, Jo, she loves cycling as well. So we cycle together around Oxfordshire, which is great. And we're planning to go to South America next year together to cycle for 3 months from La Paz down to Patagonia. So she's never been.
Seems pretty easy, doesn't it? 3 months.
Yeah. It's just like, what of a duck's back.
A walk in the park.
If you'd not told us any of the backstory, you literally could have come on the podcast with just that story.
I'll come back again in a few years.
I'm doing a trip for 3 months. Wow. Do you want to be a guest?
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I, we spoke to Kieran, who cycled just from somewhere in Kent to back home to Wendover.
And you made a full podcast.
Yeah, it was actually good.
There's a story. Everyone has a story. It doesn't matter how far you've gone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think everybody, like, it's like the best stories have not even been written. This is like our motto of the show. And I think, especially when you speak to people like you, this is like becomes more and more prominent. That you know, especially how you approach it. All of a sudden, the idea was there, and you just do it, right? Everybody. Sorry, I don't want to say like everybody can do it, but but at the same time, everybody can do it if you just put your heart and your mind to it, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. Like, I think anyone can do it if they choose to, but obviously if you've got kids or a mortgage and things like that, it's very, very difficult to take 3 years of your life off. You have to be in a certain very privileged position to be able to do that. And I think that's worth reiterating. And I also think nowadays, I don't think that trip was not currently possible now with COVID than it was when I did it. You know, even if the borders were open, would people take a stranger into their houses the way that happened to me? And I think it would be those who are planning those trips and haven't actually gone yet are going to find it potentially, I don't know, but a very different experience to what I had. And that's a shame.
Did you ever think about that kind of stuff? I'm pretty sure you did. So they were like, oh my goodness, what would have happened if COVID would have just cracked free while I was on the road?
I mean, I guess you would just have to go home, wouldn't you? That was the advice from the world. Like, I remember being on the Tour d'Afrique trip, guiding from Cairo to Cape Town. We got to Tanzania, and this was March, and it was everybody needs to go home. The border of Zambia is closed, and the Canadian government is telling all the Canadians to fly home. So this is quite serious. And I guess I think a lot of people did try and wait it out. Like, there's a bit of a cycling community with some WhatsApp groups and some information that I'm a part of. And I think some people did try waiting out to see if it would, if it would be any easier in a few months. But I think most people now are, at least the big long trips. So there's a small windows where you could still cycle around Europe and things like that. And you probably still can now. But those big long trips, it can be very difficult going forward, unfortunately.
Do you think it will remain like this, or will it ever be? I don't know.
Fingers crossed, it will go back to how it used to be. I don't know the answer, but I mean, hopefully so. I can only imagine that with all the good vaccines and things that are going on, that eventually we'll get a good resistance, and we can go wherever we want again.
Amazing. cool. Is there anything? Did you have any sponsors or something like actually for this trip, or is there anyone you would like to mention during the show?
So I didn't have any sponsors. I did it all off my own back. I did write to one company and see if they would sponsor me, and they didn't reply. So I thought I can't bother to write to anyone.
So we also don't mention them.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just not very good at getting disappointed.
You're lost. Beep.
Yeah. I guess just the trip itself was just an amazing endeavor. Like my partner at the time, Finola, she was a big part of that. So I give props to her for cycling for a year together. That's a really tough thing to do, probably even harder cycling with me. I also think that just the people I met around the world, from, the little granny who invites you in for tea to, the people in El Salvador who looked after me the most when I was at my worst. It's just a world is full of amazing people, and I think every one of them should be heralded, and everyone probably knows someone who has a story or has a story themselves of the same thing. So it's a beautiful world out there.
So good. Yeah. And if people want to follow you on all your future and current adventures, what would be the best place to do so?
So I've got a website, kind of. I mean, I'll update it occasionally. It's timmillikin.com, or Instagram, Instagram, Tim's at Tim C Millikin on Instagram is probably the best one. The book is available, which is great, and the best place to buy it is actually from my website. There's a little shop there, and if you buy it from the website, you actually get a signed copy, and it's got color pictures in. It's also available on Amazon, but on the Amazon one, it's unsigned because Amazon handle that part of the deal.
Oh, get it from the website for sure.
Get it from the website, yeah.
Definitely get it from
support the support the authors, not the Amazons.
Oh, so good. Maybe if some of the listeners want to have a dedicated name on it, like where you say, like, hey, dear Hans. I don't know. No, like an English name. Peter.
Yes. Well done, yeah.
Dear Peter. So it's a perfect Christmas present, right? So if you go onto the website, you can put in a note, whatever you want to say. Even if Gemma wants to.
You, Niels.
Yeah, Gemma can come out with one for Niels.
Yes.
Let's do it for. I know we need to get one for Mike. He's not here.
But
he's going to listen, though, isn't he?
You can just whistle. Not whistle. Whisper.
Whisper.
Yeah. Let's get it for Mike.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Get my mic. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you can write whatever you want, and whatever you. Someone actually asked me the other day, like, Tim, can you put on some lipstick and give it a kiss? And I was like, well, if you buy a copy, I'll do it. Yeah. So I did.
I want the same.
Yeah.
Mike could like that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Good. And for you listeners, obviously, if you want to have your book to read about this fantastic journey, as Tim mentioned earlier, he will also dedicate a part of this book to his former partner, where he explains a little bit about the situation. I think this is like super interesting, not just from a cycling point of view, also from like like a personal point of view or intersocial point of view. So go to his website. We will put the link in the description of the episode, and also on we will share it across social media. It is not too late yet to buy it for Christmas for your loved ones. I think it's a fantastic book to buy. Reading to Reading.
Perfect.
So I think, to be honest, like I could still say, I don't know where to start because I have so many questions. However, we have to come to an end at some point. But I'm pretty sure we will meet again for another couple of conversations, because you've done so many trips. But for now, Tim, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Jim, and for answering what feels like a barrage of questions from Niels and I. Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. I really enjoyed just answering the questions, and you two are really great at asking them, so thank you.
Gemma,
if the listeners want to follow us,
what can they do?
I know it's a bit of a anticlimax now. Tim's talked about all this stuff, but we do have good content on Veloccino as well. Yeah. They can follow us on Instagram at Veloccino.
Yeah, and also on Facebook.
On Facebook, yeah.
Maybe. And so, yeah, thank you very much. Keep in mind, go out, ride your bike. The best stories have not yet been written, and we are out for now. So, bye.
Bye, guys.